Very typical, right? We get interviewed all the time. Not many people are lined up.
And it's okay to speak up louder than usual because we can always dim the audio down later, so you don't have to worry about it as much. There you go. Well, just the volume you're talking at now is actually pretty good. Okay, so I'm here with store owners of Event Horizon Games, Paul Coulter and his wife Lisa Desiree Coulter. Lissa. Let me just start that over then. I'm so sorry I mispronounced it. So I'm here with the game store owners Paul Coulter and Lissa Desiree Coulter of Event Horizon Games. You guys are a year into operation now. 2 days before the store opened last year, we did a sit-down interview with you guys and talked about your expectations, your hopes, and your dreams about the store. And here we are a year later. So I think what I'd like to know most is how do you think it's going? In your words.
Shoot, honey.
I think it's going fabulously. Of course, there is always room for improvement. We are still working on setting up systems and procedures, but I don't think I could have anticipated the level of success and customer loyalty and support
Sure.
that we've experienced, and just the community that we've created is awesome.
So why don't we set that up in context real quick. So a year ago, you guys were opening. It was 2 days before the opening when we sat down and interviewed with you.
The store. You didn't think we were going to open?
Well, I was nervous, to be honest. Like there was still the walls hadn't been painted. There was still mud on the walls. There was product just being shipped in. Everything was still very much a flurry of activity. And now to look at the store, you would have imagined this place has been here for a decade, let alone just a year.
It's still a flurry of activity.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
but there is definitely a difference. Customers have noticed it. Even new customers have asked, the question of how long we've been around. And when we say a year, they look around the store literally and go, "Whoa, okay, that's not what I expected to hear."
So what would you guys attribute to your success? If you had to pinpoint it on a few certain things.
Sheer determination, and I think a lot of listening to customer feedback.
Just listening to customers, and one example is like Dust Tactics. We had a customer come in, Ian, who mentioned the game and asked whether or not we were going to carry it because he had been playing it at a different store, and I was like, well, we don't currently carry it, but we'll check into it, we'll think about it. And he came in like a week and a half later, and of course Dust Tactics was blasted all over the shelf. And he was like, I was asking a question, and wow. And all of a sudden now we carry Dust Tactics, and it's one of our lines, and him and his people come in and play. And it's just, listening to customers allows us to broaden the store and fulfill requests that aren't being met at other game stores.
Do you ever feel like that's a risk? Like if someone came in with a very obscure game and you carried it, and then for whatever reason they either didn't need your stock or the game was discontinued or something like that?
Yes, everything's a risk.
Sure.
There's no doubt that everything that you carry is a risk. But if it's super obscure, then I might not go out on the limb like I did on Dust Tactics. It was carried by the company that makes Flames of War, which is a game that I was very familiar with. It was also it's kind of like a World War II in a weird alternate universe where the game expands and continues as if World War II hadn't ended, which allowed me to immediately join it with Savage Worlds Weird Wars. So I went, okay, so you're telling me that there's a model game out there that's not only a tabletop game, but also a tactical game because it has Dust Warfare with it, but it's a bunch of models that is just completely supports my Savage Worlds line right off the bat. Role-playing wise. And Ian said, yeah, and I said, oh, well, wow, I can't see why we wouldn't carry that then, type of a thing, and so I do. But there has been some weird ones that people have asked about that either I carry in a very small environment, small quantity, or that I just got in for them in a one-off, and a lot of times if somebody walks in and asks for a special order like My Little Pony Monopoly, and I don't have it, I'll buy two. One for the person that ordered it and one for my shelf, because there's a good chance that some other customer also wants that item. So that allows us to grow the store without really having to risk much, because the first person kind of pays for me stocking my shelf. Close, yeah. It's kind of a benefit because the store gets to grow without me having to just lay out money that I wasn't thinking about in the first place. Sometimes I don't do that, and sometimes I go super heavy, on something. So.
And chances are, if one customer is asking for something, somebody else might be interested in it, and that first customer has done a lot of the research so we can do minimal research but still have confidence because we trust our customers and their interests also.
Right, and we've got a couple of customers that are like heavy into board games, for instance. So they do, but not only their own board game night, kind of like Tabletop by Will Wheaton, but so they do a lot of the research and come to us and say, hey, by the way, these are kind of like the top 10 games that I think you should carry. And so I'm like, oh, okay, that's good. You know, that's a good thought process. And I mean, I'm already tied into Board Game Geek and stuff like that, but having customers that have kind of already played the games or done the research or looked at the Kickstarters and stuff like that helps me because I've already got a rapport with them. And so when they come to me with a list, it helps me broaden the store in the right direction
And we can
without
have
a lot of risk.
we can have conversations with our customers to see, to find out more details about that, and so that helps us with the research and also helps us build a relationship with the customers.
Sure. So originally, when you guys opened, your plan was sort of to carry certain lines, and then you had a lot of ideas, and then it's clearly you've expanded into new areas, like, for example, T-shirts and comic books. And so where do you feel like you were a year ago, and what areas have you expanded into, and maybe areas that you didn't expect to expand into but have been profitable, or areas that at first you thought would be profitable but that turns out in the area it wasn't exactly part of what your original plan has changed to reflect it, that sort of thing?
Well, when we first started kicking around the idea, and I say first started, I mean, when I was building my original business plan, which was, late 90s, after I'd been a partner in other game stores, and I was kind of thinking about what I wanted to do. My thought was, and I even found my map that I had laid out what my game store would look like if I, had my way.
Does this reflect it closely?
It does in some ways. There's a lot of things that are in the store because of the years of listening to other people and sitting down at tables and thinking to myself, gosh, I wish I had, my own locker to put my stuff in so I didn't have to keep carrying it back and forth in my car or whatever. And other things aren't in the store, like computer networking computers, consoles, stuff like that. One of the reasons was the Leafs didn't want us to have them, but in the second thing, we didn't want to carry computer games. I never really wanted to sell computer games, but I liked the idea of having like networked Xboxes or something like that.
The venue for group play.
Which, some other stores in the area do, and they do it well, and I'm kind of glad that we don't, because it allows them to do it and allows us to do different stuff and kind of focus and have space. The private RPG rooms people love, and it was always something that was something I wanted because it cuts down on the noise and allows people to have their theme and their kind of venue kind of specific without interrupting other people and without having to scream at each other just to hear the dungeon master think. And so that's been a big hit, and the windows have been very huge in the standpoint of customers can stand here and look at them without interfering with their game, and can be really close and not and it's not closed off. And then having it all open is because of the parental child thought. Our thought was, if it's a well-lit store and it's very open, then parents are going to feel more comfortable in bringing their kids here. And that's been true. We're getting a flush of kids. In the beginning, we had a lot of thoughts. We were going to put in a Starbucks style,
Coffee counter.
Yeah, coffee counter. We were going to do the whole coffee house as part of the store. And we didn't do that. And we were going to go heavy into books, and it was literally going to be like a used bookstore, kind of like a, whatever the one is up on Capitol. I can't think of the name of it.
Edward McKay?
Yeah, Edward McKay. So it was going to be like that, and we were going to go that route as well, because some of the people that we were originally talking to, that was kind of their dream, having a bookstore, and another person was having a coffee store. And I was like, well, that's great, because all those things can easily be incorporated into this store. And we didn't go those routes. We carry books, and we sell Keurigs and stuff like that, but it's not what we do. And again, I think that it's good for us that we don't do that, because it allows us to put focus into other areas that are growing and flourishing instead. And then we've had a couple of failed ventures of stuff that either the line itself has just died. World of Warcraft card game, and Kaijudo is now in that, because they're killing off Kaijudo, stuff like that. And comics has probably done a lot better than I thought it was going to do.
I think our Magic tournaments.
Magic has gone nuts, but we kind of thought that it would.
We expected Magic the Gathering card game to be successful for us. I wasn't anticipating the amount of attendance at our tournaments. We've had almost 140 people show up at one
Wow.
tournament, and we consistently have 50, 60, 80
At our big tournaments,
people. And when new sets release, our pre-release weekends will have 150
yeah,
upwards
160, yeah.
people over the weekend to come to play.
Which is kind of nice. We set a lot of marks for ourselves based on other game stores, either in the local area or ones that my friends own in California or ones that I was a part of. Things of, well, how much is our opening month going to be? How much is a average month going to be? What should we should expect our peak month to be? And slowly through this year, amazingly enough, we've boxed off a lot of those, and so it's been kind of nice to hit those marks earlier than we thought we would.
I think we were not anticipating the level of staffing that we would need to handle exceeding our sales expectations. And so, we were expecting
Yeah.
this to be run like a mom and pop shop, basically,
Mhm.
with family and an investor or two. And
I mean,
we've got
to that end,
8 to 10 people on staff now.
on that
Wow.
point when we opened, literally, my son moved out here from Washington,
I remember.
and it was Lissa was going to run days Monday through Friday, Michael was going to run nights Monday through Friday, and I was going to be here on the weekends because I had a job that was going to require me to
Travel.
to work, or in the job that I had just started when we actually pulled the trigger, I was actually working remote, so I was working from home. So I was just going to be in the back office 7 days a week and, working. And if they needed me, I was here. But, literally it was going to be one person behind the counter and everything was going to run just smoothly and there wasn't going to be any problems.
And we had 2 investors that were also working.
Well, we didn't when we lined it up.
Oh,
when we
yes.
first signed the lease, we didn't have the other 2 investors, and we were at another game store playing Blood Bowl. I was, and I had just gotten a call that day from my realtor saying, "Hey, somebody else just looked at your spot, and literally wants to open up the same thing you did," which was odd, because I kind of had my pulse on the other game stores in town and knew that none of them were expanding, and was kind of like, "Huh, that's kind of interesting. Who's wanting to open up a store? Because nobody is really growing." And I happened to be sitting across from a friend of mine who is now an investor, and I made some mention to it, or he made some mention or something about how he was looking into opening a store. And I was like, "Oh, well, that's interesting because that's what we're doing." And he's like, "Yeah, we were just looking at a spot up at North Station on Garner Station Boulevard." And I was like, "Dude, that's my spot." Like literally, I already have a lease there. And so we sat down and talked. And instead of them going a route of opening up their own store, which they were looking like a year plus out, they instead came on board with us. So we actually opened with 5 people, kind of like running the store.
Sure.
With 2 of us having real
Full-time
jobs,
jobs.
real jobs, and the other
full-time jobs.
yeah, and here we are. So now we're a year later, and we have a lot different people on staff, and we have coverage all over the place. And on big weekends, we got four people behind the counter, and so yeah, it's a lot different than we kind of thought. But potentially that's why we're successful as well, because we kind of have that something that the other 2 game stores really didn't. We talked about that I was a partner in other stores and why they possibly failed. And I think maybe that level of either burnout from not having enough people and only the owners running the store, or just not listening, you're not having enough people that can listen to the customer because you're just too busy, running the register. So it has grown and things have happened, and we're still painting and we're still building and we're still doing that, but it's all finishing stuff, like the trim work on the window.
Sure.
That now is makes the store look that much better.
Yeah.
Even within our first year. So
What other areas do you plan to expand into in the store, or have you started thinking about a second location yet, or is it? I know this shopping center. There's a couple stores that moved in next door, so I don't know if you can blast through the wall, but.
we can't blast through the wall. I walked the space. I actually walked it with my realtor before Fins and Fangs took over, and at the time I looked at it and
He wanted to blast through the wall.
checked our sales.
How much
and
more
everything.
space would that have added?
About 2,400 square feet, so about 50% more.
Yeah.
So it's 2 more storefronts. So it would have increased us by 50%, which would have been very nice. But at the time, we were still in the process of checking off those
Sure.
goals, and it just wasn't. I had just switched jobs again, So I was traveling more, so I wasn't around, and we were hiring staff, and so it was like,
Too many unknowns.
yeah, there was a whole lot of unknowns, and sales were doing okay. You know, they were still creeping along on our pace, but they weren't where we fully wanted them to be for me not to have to travel and all that kind of stuff. And so I just like, no, you know, I'm not going to do that. That being said, since we've been here, 2 stores have opened and closed within that year, so they're already gone. And
It's a tough shopping center.
When we're looking at those spaces, we're hoping that our landlord will help us get in there for events when we have our big card tournaments, that if we outgrow the space here,
Sure.
if we can use that space. We were also approached last week, a very introductory question about if we are franchising. And
we've had the question before by a couple people where it was kind of like probing type questions. This person sounds like they might be more interested, but it's something that makes us think, you know, because we already had planned originally at the like 2015 kicking around of, you know, when do we want to open up the second store, you know, when we first opened, because I had 3 areas targeted for my initial store, let alone the next 2, just because of the Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area where I thought game stores should exist. So I've already kind of got my eyes on 2 locations. I had already walked at least one of the towns and met with realtors and everything else when we were here.
but I don't think we're ready for that yet.
Probably not, but
Eventually,
it is.
we do.
But
have
yes,
a
we have a long-term plan of expanding to the point of, you know, multi-states and go that route and get into distribution and do that kind of stuff. So.
You know, I look at a few areas of the store like comics and cards, and I can call to the top of my head at least 2 very well-known online presences, you know, that everybody who plays the game or everybody who reads comics knows of these businesses. I would eventually like to be one of those businesses that becomes a household name for that area.
Sure.
And when early on, especially, every time that we tried to make decisions or had to make decisions or were forced to make decisions about what direction we want to go in whatever area, cards, comics, etc., we would look at those places online and say, well, this is what we want to look like. You know, if that's the creme de la creme and that's the top tier people, that's where we want to be. So that's what we're going to emulate. We're going to copy them. When we went to vendor meetings and, you know, hosted by Wizards of the Coast or whoever, and we talked with other stores that had been in business for 10, 15, 20 years. And they told us procedures, you know, and the steps that they went through. Oh yeah, this is what you'll do first. This is what you'll do second. This is what you'll do third. And eventually you'll get here. We just immediately went, oh, well, then we'll just skip straight to that. If that's what we're going to do, why falter along the way? You've already done all the errors. Let's just go do it. And that's what we've tried to do. And I think that's helped us along the way, because it you know, the stumbling blocks have kind of been people helping us over them. So other stores, even local stores that we've went into and said, hey, by the way, we run this store over in Raleigh, you know, this is who we are. We heard about you and we heard that you do this stuff really good, so we're over here checking you out, type of a thing. And then we'll see something on their shelves that we would like to have here. And, you know, they'll basically be a distributor for us. We'll buy it from them. They'll give us a discount. That way we can have it on the shelf for our customers.
Until we can get set
Right,
up.
until we can figure out a way to get whatever that item is, you know.
Sure.
So.
Do you guys have any sort of advice for new game stores that want to emulate you, or people that are looking to get into the business and maybe sort of like, I don't know, general advice or general feedback a year in, things you wish you had done differently, or just, you know, that sort of stuff?
I would say choose your inventory and point of sale system very carefully. Do a lot of research and get some hands-on training to see what you're comfortable with before you dive in.
Okay.
Don't overbuy. Don't you know, if you...
In terms of product?
In terms of product. If you think, you know, something brand new is coming out and you think it's going to be the hottest thing since sliced bread, don't. Buy a couple, unless you've already got people signing up at the door paying you for the release. Buy some and then wait until it sells and then buy more. and don't over diversify. I'm subscribed to a couple of blogs by people who are in the game store business in various states and have had stores. One's in St. Louis, he's had up to 7 stores, and one's out of California, and they've both been in business around 10 or 15 years. And it was funny because the article that he just wrote was about how he used to say, hey, if you're a game store and Magic does more than 35% of your sales total, then you're in danger, right? In other words, you have the possibility of going under because all your eggs are in one basket. And he said, my newest approach to that is take the money and run. He's like, basically, if you find something and that's what your biggest seller is, buy a lot of it, push it hard, and bank the money, and then when things get rough, you'll have the money, and you can kind of make up for it. And he was, instead of being super diluted, which can be a beneficial, we're very, spread across, which we like because it brings in different people to the store. We're not just a comic store, we're not just a Magic store, we're not just a board game store. We do a lot of different things. We have action figures and T-shirts, and we have game space, which some people don't have. And so we offer a lot of different things, and I think that's part of the reason why we're doing well. There's another game store in town that's closing. Actually, just closed today.
Which one is that?
Endless Gaming.
Did they really
They're
close?
Gone. They're closed the doors. Yeah. So he's there for a couple of weeks, but he's done. And I haven't had a chance to talk with Mike about exactly what pulled the trigger on that, but a couple of customers had told me that when he first opened, he used to run a lot of events, and people went there for that, and then he kind of stopped the last 3-4 months. I don't know if he already had known that he was going to close, and so he just kind of backed off on scheduling events or what. But like I said, that was one of the places that that's tied to the opening of the store because I was playing Blood Bowl there when some of my investors came on board. So it's just since we've been open, 2 stores have closed, right? One closed right when we opened, and the other's now closing a year later. So it's hopefully we made it past a year, but a year is not. My personal mark is 2 years, right? The personal mark is 2.
Mine's 5.
Because the other 2 stores closed at 2 years, both of them, amazingly enough, that I was a partner in. And then the store that I was invested in, that was up in Washington, they had 3 stores. And when I got invested, they were all about, hey, we just built our prototype store, and we're going to go to these venture capitalists, and we're going to get them to invest in us, and we're going to go to 10 stores, and, we've got all this stuff about stock splits, and everything's going up, right? And I liked the look of their store and the feel and their game plan and, looking at everything. And they went to the investors, and the, investment people said, well, why don't you get to 10, and then we'll take you to 100. No problem. We like what you're doing, but you're still kind of small. And instead, they just kind of crashed and burned because I think they had sunk so much money into that store. That's the other thing about new stores. Don't spend too much money on your opening.
Okay.
A lot of people do that, and I think that it sinks them right off the bat. I think you're better off